Hi there, this is Sol Chiron from Sol Chiron Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is from 2015. It's Hong Sang-soo's Right Now, Wrong Then. This is the Plain Archive, it's by number 31 edition. Again, I don't want you to think that every random review I seem to be doing is either an indicator or a Plain Archive release. That's just your imagination. These aren't the reviews you're looking for. This stars Jong Ji-yoon and Kim Min-hee, who was also in Hong Sang-soo's On the Beach at Night Alone. He's made 28 films, but due to my ignorance of Korean cinema, this is the first one that I have seen. He started his career in 1996. Also, because this is Plain Archive, you get a lovely booklet. Part in Korean, part in English. And this is a Region A edition. Some Plain Archives are multi-region, some are Region A. And as always with Plain Archive, you get their wonderful envelopes. And there's a poster and art cards. So this is a film from 2015, and it's an interesting little film. It's kind of in two halves. It reminds me a lot of Hal Hartley's Flirt, which was in 3 parts with the same script but just performed by different actors in 3 different cities. This one is 2 halves. It's a similar script, but there's just subtle differences. It's a pretty simple story of a director who's in town for a screening of one of his films, and Sang-woo Hong's films are usually about directors or actresses, or I don't know whether there's quite a lot of himself in his films. It's about this director that, because of scheduling error, comes a day early. So he's got nothing to do for a day. He's out of town. He lives in Seoul, but this isn't Seoul. And he meets this woman at a temple, and he spends the day with her. They go for coffee, and they go to see her workshop because she's a young artist who's just kind of starting out from previously being a model. They go for sushi, and then they end up at one of the artist's friends for the evening, and then the following day we see him at his screening and Q&A of his film afterwards. So it's a really simple story. It's split into 2 halves. So the first half, if I can get this right, the first half is Right Then, Wrong Now, and the second half is the same as the title of the film, which is Right Now, Wrong Then. And it's really about the subtle difference of when we give information away, how we speak to each other, we learn through the film that he's married, but depending at what point in the story actually tells the female character this, how honest he is. You know, in the first version of the story, he's very gushing about her painting, which makes her feel good. In the second version of the story, he's more honest and says it's more conventional and it's because you've been alone. And in both versions, the director, like the actor who's playing the director character, just to differentiate from the actual director of the film, he is a bit of an arse at times. In the second version of the story, while she's resting when they're having the party with her friends, he strips in front of the other two women. Because he's married, he's essentially just wanting some fun with a woman, which again, you can go into the morals of that all you like. She is obviously a little bit damaged from the past. She used to be a model, she made lots of money doing that, but now she just wants to paint. She says she doesn't have a lot of friends, which, depending on which version of the story he's kind of more sensitive to or less sensitive to. I mean, it's a relationship that can't work. In the first half, it's because of the information that he doesn't tell her until later on. In the second half, which I suppose is the slightly more positive version, because he's upfront about his marriage, but then he has stronger feelings and exudes those stronger feelings. So in the second story, the character of the director is kind of more honest. In the first half, he's more deceitful. It's a really interesting little film. Again, it's very patient. There's not a lot going on visually. There's a lot of long to mid shots that just sit there, but then when something important is said or happens, the director just moves the camera in very slightly. It's not jarring, it's just a gentle kind of moving in to perhaps a medium shot. Again, the second half, or the second version of the story, he does use close-up a bit more. He does focus on little details a bit more. But again, there's no kind of directorial pyrotechnics in this film. It expects you to pay attention to what's going on. Like all Korean films, it looks really nice. It's shot really nice. Again, there only really is the two main characters. There is some kind of brief appearances by secondary characters, like the woman's mother, obviously the two or three friends that they meet at the end. But the film does have a strange vibe. You know, there's not a lot of people in the streets. You do feel, it almost feels a little bit like a Haneke film, bizarrely, in the sense that you feel something could explode, something bad could happen, but maybe that's just me, because again, it kind of lulls you into this long medium shot that just sits there for most of the film. So that, for me, it did have a kind of slightly unsettling vibe, even though the story's not unsettling. Again, it is just how we meet people and what information we actually give out, and depending when we give that information out, how we put that information across can sometimes be accepted by another person, sometimes it can be offensive to another person, it can upset another person. Again, I think he's also making comments about himself, about directors, about artists. Like I say, there's quite a few of his films that are about actresses thinking about relationships, or directors thinking about the relationships in their work. Yeah, it's a really interesting little film. Right Now, Wrong Then, even though the first half, like I say, is Right Then, Wrong Now. Yeah, an interesting little film. Don't expect a lot of fireworks, but if you've got a bit of patience, and you kind of get invested in the characters, especially for me, the female characters more interesting than the male character. Like I say, the director is a bit of an arse in both versions of the story. Yeah, but it's another, I mean, like I've said before, granted I've seen a limited number of Korean films, just so happens that quite a lot of them I'm doing random reviews of. I mean, I still haven't seen a Korean film that I haven't liked. Again, some of them I absolutely love, but even the kind of least engaging kind of mainstream ones that I've seen, you know, they're still well worth watching, and they're still a lot of fun. I think this one would bear repeated viewing, because there's little nuances, you know, because once you realise what is actually going on, you can kind of spot those nuances, the difference in conversation, the slight difference that he shoots the first half of the film and the second half of the film, just slight subtle differences. As usual, we play an archive. There are some extras, but unfortunately there's no English subtitles in the extras, but you kind of get a gist of what's going on. So that's, I'll check again, Right Now, Wrong Then, from 2015, by Hong Sang-soo. Again, I apologise to any Koreans that are watching. Maybe one day I'll get to pronounce Korean names properly. But let me know in the comments below if you've seen Right Now, Wrong Then, or if you just watched the first half, so it's Right Then, Wrong Now. So leave comments below if you've seen the film. Let me know what you thought of it. And hopefully you'll see me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.